Hello, and welcome back to the Astral Tourist Podcast, where we shop weird, float casual, and occasionally get propositioned by demons in aisle 5. So a few nights ago, not last night, which is even more amazing, so stay tuned for that episode, but a few nights ago, I found myself autonomously astral projecting, cruising the astral plane with zero plans, and somehow ended up in what can only be described as a giant, slightly cursed grocery store. Infinite aisles, canned cereal. That was one of the funniest things that, started to get me lucid, was seeing canned cereal next to like the SpaghettiOs. There were also loose cookies stacked like sugary Jenga towers. They weren't in packages. Basically your standard interdimensional Whole Foods from hell, I guess. Only bigger than Whole Foods even. Oh my gosh, it was so weird. But I was going with the flow. I was tired. So I was just wandering around doing the usual dream mall dwaddle. Only I was astral projecting. But remember, in the astral, when you're tired, you can kind of dream over it a little bit too. So a kind of mixed state of conscious awareness on this one. I was carrying this absolutely useless paper bag full of broccoli and snacks. Now, broccoli is just like me. I go for veggies in the astral and seaweed and stuff like that. It tends to give me more energy. I don't know why, but it does. I just absorb it easier into my energy body. So naturally, the bag kept tearing, and I kept wondering why. Like, why is my bag tearing and falling apart? Like, it seemed like a really extra flimsy brown paper bag, So I was kind of like a raccoon trying to hang on to dinner scraps, while upside down or something. I wasn't upside down. I was feeling really ridiculous with that bag, and I did begin to get more lucid, and I was like, okay, I think I'm at least dreaming. I think I'm in the astral. The store looked kind of familiar, so I was coming around kind of slowly a little bit. Keep in mind, I made no intentions. I didn't even want to remember anything when I fell asleep that night, because I knew I was trying to rest up for better astral projections later, and just to have more energy in my physical life. Sometimes it's good to take a break. This happened instead. So then this bulky guy with thick wavy black hair kind of sidled up and asked if I needed help. And I think I was just coming out of the general produce. I had seen the canned cereals, I think on an end cap or something. And so that's when he was coming up to me, and I said, no, I'm just shopping for a few snacks. I didn't feel like going into the veggie thing. So I said that like it was just, I was just there being normal, even though I knew something was, I was in another space. I knew I was by then. He nodded suspiciously friendly and said, let me show you something over here. So I didn't really have a full red flag yet, but from him, but I was like, maybe an orange one. I knew he was being a little weird, but some people come off a little weird and they're just being normal, and I didn't feel like, pulling up my astral defenses for nothing. It's just a grocery store, right? So I said, I followed him along. I was like, okay, I guess I can take a look. And he led me to the meat section, because of course there's a meat section in the astral Costco or Whole Foods or wherever. And he pointed out some really red looking steaks, fresh, shiny, very red. And he said, these will power you up for a whole astral day. And he used the word astral. And I looked at him and I'm like, yes, I know I'm in the astral plane. I know an astral day is longer than a physical day. Like, that means 2 or 3 days in the astral at least. And the price tag was very clear. I usually can't see numbers very well, but it was $19.99 for what I'm pretty sure was maybe not that great meat. I mean, it looked really good, like fresh steaks and stuff. But again, my astral body tends to run better on veggies in the astral. So I tried to explain to him, meat's not really my astral vibe. Plus, the texture is kind of weird. I've had chicken in the astral, and it just, it wasn't bad or anything. I don't usually taste it a lot in the astral, but I could feel textures, and the texture was just, with chicken, it's okay if there's nothing else, but, I might as well eat dirt just as easily because the texture was just, is so odd. And so I was like, no, thanks. Really, I'm okay. He kept insisting. He was a very determined protein pusher. I don't know. But then he casually flashes me his true form. Like he knows I'm getting more lucid and he decides to come clean about who he is. So, yep, demon, full reveal. Or at least, has a total vibe of one. And if he's not a demon, he was a really good shapeshifter, like impersonating one. Orange and gray skin, pointy ears, tail, the whole underworld starter pack, like for a bad video game or something. And then he snapped back into human disguise. That was me trying to snap, like it was a party trick or something. And then because subtlety is dead, he wraps his arms around me from behind loosely, just loosely, and says, "So, you interested in hooking up with a demon like me?" And I'm like thinking to myself, excuse me, where is this coming from? How did I somehow attract a demon, So even in semi-astral autopilot, I know when a demon's trying to flirt via the meat aisle. So I just played it cool and said, "Oh, so you're a bad boy, hmm?" And he was not expecting that, and that's why I did it that way. So I have a whole other episode on dealing with astral troublemakers that those who are curious can consult. So basically that was a confusion tactic on my part, just going with the flow. Yeah, I'm just still in my same head space, even though I wasn't. I just kind of went with it so you're a bad boy. It might be a good thing, But I, not too good. I was just kind of neutral, barely semi-plus, just so he knew I was lucid. And while he was processing my tiny bit of sass there, I slipped out of his arms, which were loose anyway. So, it wasn't like a direct attack. He was being loose about it. And I floated toward the exit, and he kind of stared at me. And he was staring back at the steaks, really, don't you want a steak? They're really good. They'll make you, stay in the astral for longer. He wasn't really directly saying it. By then we were just looking at each other, and he was looking at the steaks, hoping I would change my mind. And this was not really about, a flirtatious advance, really. His mind was on those steaks. And so I just said, "I'm low on credits too." And I just said that to throw him off, "You need something, but I have needs too, but no thanks." And it worked. I drifted out through the glass doors that were there and into the street. Looking back, I think I instinctively gray rocked him. And that's a psychological method where you stay emotionally neutral and uninteresting, so manipulators lose interest. So if you haven't heard of that before and you're dealing with some weird people in your life, it works very well in the physical too. It should just help people not even pay attention to you. You become very uninteresting to them. It's not like a total ghosting. You acknowledge them because otherwise, they're going to be mad you just said no or something. So it's about acknowledging them, but then just not being interesting. You're too busy, always working. Something's always coming up for you. And they just can't really put a hook in there that way. So that's how this was. No big reactions, no fear. I did not really flirt back. I just kind of gave him yeah, I just heard you there, but I'm not interested in meat. So mild disinterest, not a full-on, "Hey, no, you're ugly" thing. And a little sass, which maybe I did a little too much sass for a full gray rocking there, but, again, semi-subconscious there. And I feel like he picked up on my exhaustion and it was offering me a quick energy boost of some kind, whether, the flirtatious style, I'll keep things PG here, or through the meat. But I think it was more about the meat. And something like this is probably about accessing energy. And, energy vampires and demons like this, they need a kind of an opening to connect with you. And so if you don't really give them one, then they can't. And instead of engaging, I just kind of floated off like, no thanks. I don't have any credits. I'm just going to go now. And sometimes the best astral defense really is just to stay boring. I could have gone small, but I wanted to keep exploring. I remember going small as one of my go-to methods, but it takes more energy than just blowing somebody off, I guess. And here's the thing. Demons usually have to disclose themselves at some point. Not all energy vampires do. This was an intelligent demon. Not like really smart, of course, because, grocery store, come on, preying on people or whatever. But, it's not always dramatic, but there's this pattern, even in mythology, you hear about it, where they can't fully put a hook in unless they disclose themselves somehow, unless you see them for what they are and still agree to, the spoken or unspoken contract. It's like there's this cosmic loophole that, says they need some kind of consent, even if it's very subtle, like buying some life force from them in exchange for what? I mean, what would I have had to give him later? I don't know. I maybe just, I don't know, because I never got that far with him and I never will. So that little party trick reveal, that wasn't flair. And at that point, I don't think it was full-on fear-mongering either. I mean, he might have been hoping that I would have some fear and he could feed on that directly. But the long-range goal in his mind was the meat transaction. It was about the transaction. And, never transact with a demon, of course. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell people this, but yeah, people do it anyway. So, I had gone out the glass doors. I was floating down the street, which I, was observing the buildings, and I noticed this is a mid-level astral dimension of Seattle that I've seen before. So I know I was back on the West Coast, which is pretty common for me to pop back over to the West Coast. I live in the East Coast now, but I have lived on the West Coast. I never lived in Seattle, though, but I keep going there in the astral. So I think maybe one of my parallel selves or something, my parallel energy forms, whatever you want to call it, is there. I don't know. I've lived in California and Oregon, never Seattle, but I keep going back to Seattle. And it hit me. I had not paid for my groceries. I was still carrying this bag, and I had not properly paid for the groceries. So as if this couldn't get any longer or better, I turned around to go back, of course. And again, I'm more lucid by now, and I'm like, yeah, Seattle. Because I feel really good when I'm in Seattle in the astral. And there's already, a woman in green waiting for me, standing just outside the grocery store, like a cosmic loss prevention officer, which could have been what she was, actually. Astral security is a thing. And I've actually, if you check out my playlist on the astral jobs and things, I've actually been one of those. So I know what to look for. I know how to prepare a space and help put up safeguards and things. And all she says as I come back is we have to go to the back room. So I'm getting the vibe that they don't know me there very well, or know me at all, maybe. So I already know I'm going to have to tell them everything, every detail, give them my astral ident and references. Sometimes an ident comes with references from others in the area, and just go through the whole shebang. So, just to make sure that they didn't already know me and we could shortcut this, I tried to explain about the demon meat guy and the distraction tactic. But she was just looking at me like, we still have to go to the back room and file all this. So yeah, at least she wasn't familiar with me already. So in the back, there's a man with a notepad and a kind of recording device. It looks like a tape recorder or something, even though we're like in the mid-astral. I feel like the technology should have been better. That was, communicated to me. I don't know. And, of course, we're all telepathing, and it has nothing to do with verbal stuff. And so I start telepathing with him really quickly because I could tell he was very aware, and I could just like shoot it at him, and fast forward everything. Like my ident, I'm a good person. I don't steal. You can check my ident. Here's my ident. This is what happened. This is the demon or the guy who's acting like one. And I emphasized, hey, I came back to pay as soon as I realized where I was and what was happening fully. And I also was like, and he gave me another weird look. I'm not sure what that was about. I think I was going too fast by then and getting a little irate, actually, because I have a really good reputation in the astral for the most part. And I was wondering why I had to go through all this with them and like how they hadn't found me already in the ident lists and things. And so I was like, hey, and you should wrap up those cookies next time. I guess I was irritated. The cookies weren't wrapped up and they were stacked up tall. So, he did not seem amused, but then him and that other lady were telepathing about me. And so I was becoming even more annoyed. Like they're trying to get me in trouble for this accidental shoplifting when there's no shoplifting. And I often leave more energy in a place than whatever I take, especially in advance. Or, I could come back later, but I'm sure I already had energy on file because I saw that device flash. Like I know I'm in their list. And I really think their priorities are messed up, right? The demon in the deli. Come on. I'm not the one you got to worry about here. And then they were looking more perplexed and more perplexed. And I don't know why. So yeah, that was that. And I woke up during all of that. So, hopefully they'll figure out who I am and yeah, I'm a good person. If I think I walked out with groceries, I will definitely come back. And no, this is not a fear thing in my waking life or something because I have never done that. I've always worried, like when I was really tired, like, did I pay for that? And I have the receipt with me, So I've never actually done that. And so, like, zooming out for a second, I have been moving, in the process of moving here in real physical life. I've been doing a bunch of energy and space clearing. So a lot of energy has been kicked up and in motion along with the dust. And so, I'm kind of wondering if, like, maybe my protection isn't quite as good as, usual or whatever. But I'm not really worried about it. I got to upgrade my astral defenses or at least just like put them back to the usual. And of course, during times of transitions, we all have a few weak spots, right? So, yeah, it's all good. Anyway, that's the update. And I have a new one that's just incredible coming up. So thanks for tuning in. And if a demon ever offers you overpriced steaks in Dreamland or the astral, just gray rock him. Tell him you're out of credits. You're not that interesting anyway, and float away. Until next time, happy astral travels, Starwalkers, Starseeds. It's totally fine to just blow these entities off. And don't forget to wrap your cookies.